Stephen Febey has been to dark places during the past 15 years. Some say they were destinations of his own making. The man himself says his fate was collateral damage from the Bali bombings of 2002. Welcome, Stephen. Which version is closer to the truth?
I think probably a bit of both, Mike. You know, certainly Bali played a big impact on my life, certainly back in 2002. But certainly, you know, I did, you know, a bit of poor behaviour in that time is certainly, you know, the same.
Poor behaviour? Wild behaviour?
Yeah, look, rat bag behaviour.
Yeah.
You know, it's sort of something that crept up on me. You know, I like to think I was pretty sensible and sane. And
you were during your footy career.
Yeah, well, I was, but then, you know, and I was, you know, I'd invested wisely. I was smart with, you know, life and everything like that. But, you know, a couple of things, and, you know, looking back on things, Bali was certainly maybe a turning point.
Let's go to Bali. I know it's difficult for you still, but you organised the Melbourne Football Club inter-season trip to Bali. The last night, you and a couple of mates, Stephen Armstrong and one or two of the others, go to the Sari Club just before it's bombed. Is that right? That's
right. I mean, the events, the rest of the team had left the night before, and they were all at the airport. We're at the hotel, the Hard Rock Hotel. And then we made the decision that we've got to go out on a Saturday night because it's Saturday night in Bali. Yeah. And so me and three others went, you know, instead of catching a cab, we walked. And we walked up Poppy's Lane, and certainly the moment I was on the phone to one of the guys at the airport when I turned the corner about to walk into Paddy's when the first bomb went off. And then obviously, you know, mayhem from that moment on. Certainly trying to find the people that were around you.
So you didn't know where your mates, their fate?
No, well, the first bomb goes off and that drove us back up against Paddy's. I'm up against Sari, and then raining glass coming down, and all I remember saying to my mate was, keep your feet, keep your feet. And then, must have been a football trade there, but I got to my feet, and then all I felt then was the feeling of flying because the big car bomb had gone off, and certainly just propelled me across the road, over the rows of motorbikes, up against the Paddy's fence. And then for 30 seconds, you know, ears are blown, and trying to work out what the hell has just happened, checking fingers, hands, toes, you know, if everything's there. And I suppose, and the very first image that really, I suppose, sticks with me, and even to this day, I still have that image, there's a gentleman lying on the ground with his hand up saying, help me. And I look down and he's got no legs. No legs at all. And that was obviously confronting, and I didn't know really what I could do, how I could help him. Fortunately, there was a lady there that sat beside him, put a T-shirt over his legs, over his bottom. Yes, he obviously died. But you know, in times after that moment, I've often thought back, well, how come the first guy I see is got no legs, and I'm there, and I still have some shrapnel wounds in my left side. That's all I've got. So was he in the way between me and the bomb? I often have that thought. So, you know, that does play on my mind.
I'm sure it does. Now, you came back and your mates say that you became an insomniac and you had these flashbacks most nights. Has that passed?
Yeah, I mean, certainly there for a period of time. The flashbacks were they were there for a lot, you know, in the first probably 3 to 6 months. Sleep became very erratic. Certainly I became dependent on sleeping tablets. I would take 2 a night. You know, I took 2 a night for 4 years. But in the end, it just become a reliant thing because I felt if I didn't take them, I'm not going to have any sleep at all. To the point that whether I'd be holidaying or I'd be down the coast in Sorrento, if I didn't have any sleeping tablets, I'd come home to get a sleeping tablet. Yeah. It had gripped me, got a grip on me that much that I just lost.
And that was classic post-traumatic stress syndrome, correct?
Certainly.
Yeah. Now, were you predisposed? Were you depressed at that point, or did the depression come later?
I think the post-traumatic stress, probably set in probably months later, in terms of in the full sense, because initially I just retired from football. I'd just been married. I was renovating a house. I just started a new job. I did have some distraction, and you know, but then I think when I had those quiet moments, and then it started to get a grip of me, and then, you know, and that's where my behaviour I felt, I look back now, was changing, you know, becoming short, irritable, probably started to drink, and all that sort of stuff.
Did you drink during your playing career? I don't mean while you were playing, but sort of in between seasons. Were you a drinker?
Look, I mean, the opportunity when, football back then, when I first started, train Monday, train Tuesday, train Thursday, play Saturday, get pissed Saturday night. And that was probably the routine. But it was never, it might be once a week, but that would be it. Obviously, when the season finished, yes, footy trips and all that, certainly there would be that element of binge drinking on a footy trip, or going home for Christmas. But no more so than the normal teenage guy or guy.
Were you ready for the end of your footy career? I must think, as the layman here, the lay psychologist, it seemed to me that the end came too quickly for you at Melbourne. You'd played 14 seasons and 258 games and suddenly it was all over and you didn't cope. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think certainly a number of players go through, when do you finally stop? You don't get to finish on your own terms that often. My brother didn't. I probably was forced into retiring because I was injured at the start of 2002. The club were fantastic. They gave me another year after 2001. I was sitting on that 258 games and Robbie Flowers on 272 and Jim Steins is on 264. And, the opportunity to, be the highest game player of the oldest sporting club in the world, at the time I thought it'd be great, but I also felt like a little bit of an imposter because you look at those names and you think, I'm going to be could be the most games by, by Melbourne Football Club player.
You mentioned Robbie Flower and Jim Steins, both gone way too soon. Add in Troy Broadbridge, Sean White and Dean Bailey. The trauma for you young blokes must have... I mean, I only appreciated that when you mentioned put them all together, to lose 5 people that you've either played with or been coached by, it's got to have a big emotional impact.
Massive, because, very close to, all of them, particularly, more really close to Sean. And Sean was a bit of a, it wasn't your normal footballer in terms of, as I said before.
He was a good one.
Oh, he was fantastic. Most athletic player I've played with, but he wasn't your normal knockabout footballer, as I said before, get drunk on a Saturday night and, that. But I worked with Sean, I played golf with Sean, and my mum and dad absolutely loved Sean because he was so accommodating, after games, he would talk to everyone, and he was a great mate. And I suppose the image, and this is another little image that sticks with me, the day that I got a phone call from David Neitz that, Sean's not great. We went to the hospital and 5 minutes too late, we got there and he'd already passed away. And, for his mum Peggy to then ask us to come into the room and, and she's still lying on the bed with her son, it's just those images just stay with you, and someone so close. And then obviously the evolution, we talk about, I mean Troy Broadbridge had passed away earlier, but then obviously Jimmy. Yeah. And then, and our great mate Robbie Flower, who was just an icon and just a legend, just those little chinks, all just, when I look back on it, were all little things that were chipping away at you, probably bringing your mood and, sending you into a depressed state. Because you blokes, when you're playing football, you're bulletproof, aren't you? You think you are. Death doesn't sort of confront footballers. Well, no. And there's 5 examples in a 10-year period for you. And it's not just our club, obviously, but it happens in normal everyday life. And sometimes we do live in as you said, in a 10 foot tall and bulletproof. Yeah. But I suppose it brought it back to reality quick smart, certainly the Bali bombings, how fragile, life can be. I was in Ireland in 2002 with the international rules team. Your brother Matthew was there, your twin brother, and David Neitz, and I know that they both took a phone call from you the day after the bombings. What state were you in then? Well, I mean, the reason why I made that call was because the 3 guys I was with I couldn't find them. I was by myself. I'd walked up and down the bomb site for an hour and a half, and the images you see, and the smells, burning flesh, the sights, just horrendous, And it wasn't until I got back to the Hard Rock Hotel and I'm there in the foyer and I'm ringing the Australian consulate, hospitals, friends, families, and ringing my brother to say I'm alive, something's happened here. At the time I didn't know the enormity of it all. And they obviously could sense it in my voice that I was, extremely stressed. And that point of, I did not know one person there because the others, the footy team had left. I did see Jason McCartney and Mick Martin, and I looked at Jason. I still remember the image. There's definitely something not right here with Jason.
Did you see him by chance, or did you go to the
No, well, he was
hospital?
back at the hotel.
Oh, he was at the hotel.
Mick had taken him back to the hotel first, and then took him to hospital because he just didn't. Yeah, there was certainly something wrong. And then I walked up and down that the concierge area for felt like about 4 hours. I wouldn't go back to my room because I just didn't want to go back to my room. And eventually I found out everyone was alive. I went back to the hotel, my room. I looked in the mirror and I just did not recognise the person I looked at. I was covered in blood and guts and grime, but also staring at myself, I didn't even recognise myself. And then I suppose, I did go into a bit of a, I think, automatic phase of organised, I've got to get these guys out of Bali, we've got to get back home. And that took a bit of a distraction. I was organising, trying to, pick them up from hospital, all that sort of stuff. And then, I still remember that image of once we got to the airport, and because you still didn't know the enormity of it all, you didn't know how many people were killed, or how many people were injured. But then 6, 7, 8 hours later, you're at the airport, 6 hours before the flight, and there's people walking into the airport just draped in bed sheets because they just couldn't get any treatment. And those images, and you see obviously they're there forever. But, it wasn't until that moment then that we hopped on the plane and sat down and hadn't slept, just shut my eyes just briefly. It felt like briefly, but it was about an hour into the flight, I opened my eyes, and there's 30 drips hanging down from the overhead container, because we were waiting for doctors. And that's when it really hit. This is bloody big.
Stephen, when we come back, I want you to tell me about the toll of the lost years. When did you think your life started to spiral out of control? Was it immediately post-Bali, or was there a period when you were just a bit lost and not sure where you were at?
I think a combination of retiring from footy, probably not, the injury, I had injuries, operations. Certainly the Bali was a massive part of it. I was, early 2003, had some operations and I was in a boot for 6 months. I was renovating a house. My then wife was overseas with her sport. And certainly then found, I was alone a lot. I just started a new job. And then was certainly at times when I suppose, I didn't have to be anywhere. I could have a drink. And I suppose that was probably the first time that, probably was drinking more than I probably would have normally.
You didn't like being alone, did you? And you were famous for having those weekend parties of people that you barely knew. And they'd all be flooding into your place in Paran. Yeah,
and I try and look back, and I've had numerous psychology sessions with different psychs, and talking about, what's me, and I put it back to that time, a bit of time in Bali, when I was by myself. It was really hard for me being by myself in Bali, with dealing with what I was, and so I did like to surround myself with company, and certainly through a certain middle phase, and up until probably for 6, 7 years, I would.
That's not a little phase, Steve.
No. I mean, in terms of through that whole time, I would be the facilitator of events or parties or gatherings, because there was that feeling, I don't want to be alone.
You used to get home a bit late from some of those, didn't you?
Yeah, well, sometimes I just wouldn't get home.
Yeah.
But...
Were you seen walking the streets of Paran at 9 a.m, but you're going home and people are going to work? Yeah,
and that's, and I look, and I joke about it and I laugh about it. I can now because it's embarrassing. It's, because it's not who I was, and it's not what I stand for, but it was... whether it was escapism, whether it was a coping mechanism, just not wanting to be alone, didn't want the fun time to finish.
Was it a fun time though?
Well, I think forced fun. It was just, sometimes I'd be standing at a bar by myself, not knowing really anyone, listening to music I didn't really like, and just really didn't want to go home. Were you an addict? You're an addictive personality by your own description, aren't you? Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Were you addicted to alcohol and to cocaine?
I think probably when I went to a mental illness clinic in Queensland last year, and really sat down with a psychologist and really worked out what my issues were, we certainly established that, yep, depression was certainly a major factor, and anxiety, but mainly depression. And and it's something that I'm not ashamed to say. I mean, I 1 in 8 men, or 1 in 8 Australians suffer from depression. 1 in 5 is anxiety. So I've certainly thought, had that in my mind. I'm not the only person that's suffering depression. But then when we really went through it and really established, well, when I was drinking, when I was drugging, what were your triggers and how you were going about it. So we established that certainly the depression was a factor into the drinking. There's a lot of escapism. I just wanted to get away from the cloudiness, so I'd drink. And then I wanted to stay in that stage, and then it led to drugs. But then talking to the psych, and it gave me a bit of comfort knowing that what I was doing was, I wasn't an alcoholic or an addict in the true sense, but I was spending like one. Mm. So I wouldn't crave drinks or drugs every minute of the day, Monday to Friday. It was more of a binge weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I could think of nothing worse of sitting home alone drinking. Mm. I just can't do it because I like to think I was a bit of a life of the party, and one drink and one bit of the drugs, I'll be up and going. But I think, am I a true addict? I don't think so. I don't believe so. But there's certainly elements of it.
You've been clean for 8 or 9 months?
8 months.
I was really taken before we came on and you said to me, I won't be broken now. Mm. Now, most people would say, the experts in the field say, addicts, for the broad description, you're never over it. Mm. You just looked me in the eye and said, you won't be broken now.
Yeah, and I suppose when I say that, I can say that with complete confidence because in a short, I know it's a short period of time, but I mean, a short period for some or long for others. Everyone's different. But in a matter of months, I've been able to certainly get back to the person I want to be. Certainly inspired by some people to get involved in certainly a passion of mine. Exercise, nutrition, diet, which I've taken full on and run with it.
Well, tell us what you're doing now.
I was fortunately, it was 2 years ago. A great friend of mine, Ashley Good, ironically the daughter of ex-North Melbourne player Kerry Good. Yeah. So, and she'd been watching me from afar, seeing that obviously things weren't right and I wasn't happy. And she'd been trying to get me involved in, in a program that she's passionate about.
She's an osteopath?
She's an osteopath, a doctor in osteopath, but, a company called Isogenics. And that's a nutritional program. And then, look, I was a sceptic, and I wasn't ready. I just wasn't ready. I kept putting off. But last year made the decision. Certainly this time last year, wheels were in motion, going to Queensland to a Corinda mental illness clinic. Went up to, she lives in Mooloolaba, and I stayed with her and her husband for a week before I went to the clinic, and I started the Isogenics program that day.
Now, Isogenics is a supplements program.
Supplement. Yeah, but it's a nutritional cleansing program. It's a holistic. It's everything. It's not just a shake. It's not just. It's nutrition. It's education. Yep. It's understanding of how we can feel. The way we should feel. So I embarked on that process, and while I was in the clinic, now I was 99 kilos.
I find that hard to believe, mate. I reckon you would have played at 80.
Yep, 80, 82.
Yep.
99 kilos, but externally you could see I was overweight, but internally, I just wasn't, obviously wasn't feeling right. But within the clinic, I went into the clinic, and I took my program with me, and
this is a 28-day clinic, right?
Yep. And went in there, and that's a confronting experience, I must admit, going into a mental illness clinic, and it's for a number of people with, we're talking people with post-traumatic stress, we're talking postnatal stress, we're talking alcoholics, we're talking addicts, we're talking war vets. And that was very confronting. That was probably the most difficult, the first day walking in there, because I thought it was a bit of overkill for what I needed, but it turned out to be the absolute best thing for me.
I've seen you, Stephen, in your current fit state, healthy, alert, active, optimistic. I've seen the other side of you too. When you remember, well, you've got photos, haven't you, of the dark days. What do you think when you reflect back on that period?
Oh, look, I mean, social media's a bloody good one for it. I mean, that many pictures of me bloody drunk, disorientated, and and I'm embarrassed.
Yeah.
Because, look, some of it's fun. At the time it seemed fun and bloody a bit of a rat bag. But I look back and go, now I've wasted some time.
You've wasted more than time.
I've wasted some time.
You've wasted more than time. By my reckoning, you've had to sell half a dozen properties. Your marriage broke down, and you lost your job, and your self-worth, I suspect.
Yeah, and look, and I'm not saying that. I mean, there's certainly the depression, the drinking, the drugging played a big part in all that, because you just don't function, or I made smart decisions. I made more money out of property than I did football. Made really smart decisions. It set myself up for life. I got frauded a lot of money, because I trusted. I became too trusting.
But did you loan people money, or did you invest in business?
No, I lent money.
Yeah.
A lot of money.
I want to ask you one that will unsettle you, I suspect. Did you know that Melbourne were uncomfortable with you being around the footballers?
Well, I don't know. Well, I don't know. I haven't heard that, but and I never really socialised with. Are we talking current day players? Are we talking past players?
Well, a mix of both, but I think that the concern was the current players.
I've never ever associated with current day players. Certainly there were some past players from all clubs, but I've never heard that comment. And look, and you saying it does, makes me feel a bit shit, because that's not what I wanted to be.
And you wouldn't want to be remembered for that.
No, God, no.
But in your own words, and it's a quaint expression, you sort of battle between good Febey and bad Febey.
What would happen, I'd go to a nightclub and the bouncer or someone behind the bar and say, now, which Febey are you? Are you the good one or the bad one? But I'm glad to say now that, I've even building a website or a brand, the good Febey guy.
Yeah.
Because I'm here to say that I am that good Febey now.
Now, understandably, you're sensitive about your marriage. You were married to another elite sporting person. Louise was an Australian hockey gold medalist. Did you both suffer from this syndrome that I've never experienced, but I understand that it exists, of when the career is over, you sort of say, where am I going from here?
Certainly post-sport depression is real. It is very real. The music stops, the fans stop cheering. You probably lost that structure of your day, of the training, the camaraderie, the actual contest. All that stops. Whether I had a bit of post-sport depression, post-traumatic stress, certainly was a factor with myself. Certainly a factor with my ex-wife. And as we see, I know it's a factor with a number of other footballers that I know of who are going through the same experience.
On the drugs in football, those of us on the outside only guess about this. We fear there's a problem, but we're not sure of the depth of it. Is the use of illicit substances a major problem amongst the player ranks?
I never saw it when I played. So I played from sort of draft 87 to 2002. I never saw it and never understood it, didn't even know what it was. But I can certainly say, it's certainly a problem. It is certainly a problem. Young men...
Is it we're talking cocaine here?
Yeah. Oh, look, there could be others, but, but not for... Certainly my issue was coke. Cocaine for me was just purely a vehicle to keep me going.
So after you got full of ink, you needed a stimulus to...
it'll keep me going again. And
so that's
all
how it started.
Yeah, that's all it was.
Did you become dependent upon it?
No, I wasn't dependent on it, but I certainly, if it was offered, I'd take it.
Did you dabble in ice?
No.
Never touched it?
No. Has no appeal to me whatsoever.
Your parents moved from Tasmania to Melbourne about 20 years ago?
Yeah.
I know you're sensitive about Matthew and you say that he answers for himself, but the two Febey boys, the twins, have both experienced these major social problems, haven't they?
Well, once again, I won't speak on behalf of my brother, and you need to ask him.
Are you blueing with your brother?
No, it's not really a blue. It's just, we always have difference of opinions, even though we're identical twins, left-handed, right-handed. Yeah. There you go. But And, you know, we do have the same thoughts and probably tell the same bad jokes. But, you know, we're both headstrong and one can't tell the other what to do and vice versa.
But did you not have the same patterns of behaviour?
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So did they not confront you about what was happening in your life?
Well, mine's been more. It might have been, dare I say, not kept secret, but, you know, I didn't really come out about it and spoke about it, you know, and they would think you'd assure them that things are okay.
Yeah.
You know, and
so you lied to them?
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
It's a lie.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, you know, and I've lied and, you know, done some dumb things.
And parents want to believe the good
do.
story, don't
yeah,
they?
they do.
Yeah.
But I feel now that certainly I'm living with my mother because my mother also has Parkinson's, but I feel like I'm repairing some of the hurt.
Good.
And I feel great comfort that I know that I'm building bridges not only with family but also with some friends, you know, that I obviously, you know, deceived, lied, lost their respect, and, you know, that's part of my mission now, that I want to get back. I want to get that respect back from a number of people and show to others that, you know, I can lead the way and hopefully inspire some others to do the same.
What's the footy highlights, Stephen?
Oh, footy highlights. Gee, I mean, I think, you know, the whole experience was certainly a highlight.
See, only 4 players in the history of the oldest football club in this country have played more games than you.
Sometimes I don't probably give myself a pat on the back for that. You know, probably certainly that whole journey that, you know, being certainly drafted back in 1986 and
number 3.
Yeah, fortunately, you know.
And did the family say that if you take Stephen, you've got to take Matthew?
Well, that's it. I mean, I know you can't get away with it now, but Melbourne had the first pick, and we certainly made mention that, if we were going to come, we were coming together.
Grand final in your second year. You were 19. Not bad for a boy from Devonport. Yeah,
well, you know, 12th game of footy, you know, and...
was your 12th game?
12th game of footy, and probably didn't recognise the enormity of it all. You know, it certainly had been, you know, I didn't even play in the qualifying final and the first semi. You know, I was brought in for the prelim. Probably held my spot because Steve O'Dwyer got suspended. But, you know, it wasn't obviously a great day.
It's been an amazing life so far. You're in your mid-40s, you're only halfway through it, mate. And I mean, I'm intrigued by the contrast between Febey the footballer and the life that's happened since. But I'm full of admiration for where you are right at the moment. I believe you when you say that you're not going to buckle from here, and there's a lot of good things still ahead. Good on you, Steve.
Thanks, Mike.